Okay, welcome to Healthy Mind Science, a show dedicated to translating youth and young adult mental health research into the real world. We have conversations with experts in psychology, neuroscience, human development, computer science, education, and more, with a focus on helping parents and educators take research findings into their everyday lives to ultimately better support our young people. Healthy Mind Science is an affiliate of the Center for Healthy Mind and Mood, which is an interdisciplinary research center at University of Colorado Boulder on a mission to increase emotional resilience and promote healthy mood in every young person. I'm your host, Alicia, and today I am so excited to get Healthy Mind Science off the ground with Dr. Rosi Kaiser, who is an incredible human and a visionary behind all of the work that we are working towards. And I'll just do a quick introduction, but we are so excited to have you. So Dr. Rosi Kaiser is an associate professor at University of Colorado Boulder in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience. Rosie is also the director of the RAD Lab, which is the Research on Affective Disorders and Development Laboratory. She's also the founder and director of the Center for Healthy Mind and Mood, which is an interdisciplinary research center that we just mentioned. And we're going to dive into that way more later on in the show. Rosie also is a PCASE award winner, which is the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers, which is the highest honor that you can achieve by the U.S. government. And we are just so excited to have you on, and I just cannot wait to hear what you have to say when it comes to the topics that we're going to talk about on Healthy Mind Science. And so thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, so let's just dive in first to tell us a little bit about yourself and really your interest in youth depression and mental health research. So, how did you get started in this and what really inspired you?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question and a big question. I would return to the idea that emotional wellness is really a cornerstone of health, not just mental health, but health more broadly. Depression is one of the oldest and most prevalent mental health challenges that we know of in human history. It affects about 1 out of 5 adults. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide, and it's also a main contributor to early mortality and to suicide. So, understanding the nature, origins, and treatment of depression is a public health priority that we should all be paying attention to. And despite the many centuries with which humans have been grappling with depression, there's a lot that we just still don't understand really what it is, where it comes from, or why it manifests differently for different people. These are all still unanswered questions. But one thing that we do know is the timing with which depression tends to start. So, depression most commonly begins somewhere in adolescence into young adulthood. So, that period between the onset of puberty and the transition to independence, that's a period of heightened risk for the onset of depression. And we know that when depression starts earlier for young people or is more severe for young people, that in turn tends to track with more severe and chronic depression in adulthood. So young people are absolutely a constituency we need to be supporting. And the good news is that effective early intervention programs, so treatments or preventive programs that are delivered to young people, have lifelong benefits in terms of boosting resilience and preventing later mental health problems. So these are some of the reasons that emotional wellness and depression have been the center of gravity for my research for a number of years, but also the clear priority that we hold in our work to support and benefit young people.
Amazing. Thank you. And what do you feel like you've learned so far just being a researcher in this space? What have you learned personally? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Many lessons. And I continue to learn every day. Much of the learning is from the people with whom I work and the young people with whom we work collectively. A big picture piece that I can comment on is that depression and related emotional wellness, resilience, these are really complicated topics. They're complicated on the individual level, they're complicated across groups, and also effective treatment really needs to be delivered better in the future. So, our current strategies for selecting a treatment for a young person tend to be based on concerns such as what will insurance pay for, or what does the practitioner know how to do. So depression itself is complicated, and our strategies for treatment don't take that complexity into account yet. Now, this may sound like bad news, but I would also say that I've learned that this is a unique opportunity. Complexity can be addressed by leveraging the strengths of what we would call multiple disciplines. What that really just means is that clinical psychology on its own or psychiatry on its own cannot address or fully clarify the nature of depression and treatment on our own. And this is part of the motivation for the Center for Healthy Mind and Mood to bring together a coalition of people with very different background and expertise, but who can work together in creative, outside of the disciplinary box ways to gain new insight. So complexity can be addressed with really creative, disruptive organizations. And that's what we hope to instantiate. And here I will say the expertise of which I'm speaking is not only clinical psychologists working with computer scientists, working with engineers, but it's also incorporating voices of lived experience, clinicians, family members, and community members, with the idea that not only will we innovate and reach new discoveries, but we'll also be able to work together to change systems, right? Policy change and healthcare change that can reach every young person in every community.
Yeah, I want to dive into that lived experience piece, just in case folks aren't familiar with that language. I think one of the things that I love working in collaboration with you is that you do value the young people who are actually experiencing this in the day to day. And yeah, I'd love to just maybe hear how do you describe lived experience, I guess, to somebody maybe who
Yeah,
doesn't like, how do we actually try to capture that?
absolutely. That's a great question. And I will say, lived experience as a label is used in different ways. In this context, what we're talking about are young people who themselves are navigating the complex world of stress and opportunity and change that is the world around us, and many of whom have either themselves had an experience of depression or a related mental health concern, or have observed it in their friends and loved ones. Earlier, I gave you the statistic that about 1 out of 5 people experiences depression, but among young people, it's actually much higher than that. So we're looking at more around 1 out of 3, maybe even 1 out of 2. And you can imagine what this means is most young people are coming to the table with really important and rich insight into what mental health means for their generation, what it means for themselves, and what it means for their loved ones. And that's the perspective that has really been lacking, I would say, in clinical and translational neuroscience. That voice of young people coming to the table and telling us about their priorities. And I'll share a story that but the folks listening to this, of course, don't, which was a group of young people with whom we met who are very active and in the mental health community and committed to mental health insight. And we asked them about their priorities, right? What are the things that you would want to achieve to be mentally healthy? What does that look like for you? And as a clinical psychologist, my expectation was that they would talk about symptom reduction, because in the medical field, that's what we focus on, right? You're experiencing heightened sadness, you're experiencing problems with fatigue, you're experiencing problems with concentration or appetite loss. Those are all symptoms of depression. And so when we're going into treatment or talking to young people, we assume those are the things that they want to change. Well, much to my surprise, those didn't even make the top 10 list, right? What young people told us was that what they want to do is foster stronger relationships, have better friends, find ways to leverage the social supports in their life, both friends, but also family members. They wanted to be able to continue achieving in school and in their important extracurricular activities, despite having depression, right? And so the focus of this conversation, the center of gravity for youth priorities, was not about symptom reduction. It was about what they want to be moving towards. And I found that to be incredibly eye-opening and also something that we never would have detected if we didn't listen to these voices.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, you are incorporating young people in kind of the design of research studies, and really trying to embed them in the research process. And I think that is like what is so critical and needed, especially in this space, because our young people are experiencing a lot and it is complicated and we need to have them at the table. So it's really exciting. I would love to just learn a little bit more from you. You've spent several years in this space, and you talked a little bit about sort of the trends of young people. It's one of three maybe are experiencing health concerns, maybe even one of two. Like, what is your area of expertise? You talked about clinical psychology, neuroscience. Like, what is your areas of expertise, and what have you really kind of learned over the past decade, or
Yeah.
more? But yeah.
Many decades, but yes, ongoing learning. Well, so my background is in clinical psychology and neuroscience. So my graduate training was founded in those disciplines. I was a curious graduate student who had the support of really great mentors who gave me space to bridge disciplines. And so that's been a model that I have embraced in my work as a scientist and a clinician since the inception of my career. So, with those discoveries, what we can learn from how the brain is operating, let's say, differently for someone who's depressed. That took me to also an interest in developmental, cognitive, and affective neuroscience. That's a mouthful, but what that really means is understanding how the brain changes over adolescence, how it processes thoughts and behavior. So, we're especially interested in how we regulate emotions or our own impulses, what kinds of brain systems support our ability to move towards goals or cope with stress. So that's the cognitive and affective piece. And these are skills that change pretty dramatically over the course of adolescence. I'm sure you can remember back to being an adolescent yourself.
I don't know if I want to.
I can vaguely, and these are normative changes that are happening. They're healthy changes that are happening, and the question is whether when those changes happen differently or when brain development looks different for young people, is that an early marker of, for example, risk for mood problems? And by the same token, can we use that information to better guide the delivery of treatments, right? It may be, we hope in the future, that we can collect information about you, your brain, your self-regulation, goal, movement, motivated behavior, and then use that to decide which medication or which psychotherapy is going to be the most effective for you. So those are some of the background areas in which my training is sort of rests, and the kinds of work that we're doing in my lab.
Yeah, I think I think it's kind of a beautiful blend right now where if we can combine the research with the technology, we can really customize and personalize treatment for every person and every young person early, and and have it really effective, be more effective, right? Increase the effectiveness of it. So I think there's so
Absolutely.
much hope in that space. And I think that that's something that really like drew me to work with you because when I met you, I was just thinking, wow, you have just this like incredible vision, and also I think you can actually achieve it. So it just really, it's like I want to work
We
with
can
you. I want to
achieve
work
it
with
together.
yes, together. It's like I want to work with you. I want to work with your team. I think um, it's just been yeah an incredible journey for me personally, but I just feel like there's so much hope and working on something that is really challenging, such as youth depression. We know that it's in the news. We see it every single day, and it's hard sometimes to see and to work on this, but to work on something that is hopefully going to um, change therapy, change treatment, change early intervention, prevention, and have it shift. I think that's something that I have hope for, and something that I think that we're gonna move the needle on. So super excited
Yeah.
about that. Anything else that you feel like you've learned just from the research that might be helpful to parents and educators more broadly? And in the future, we are going to dive into some of your research studies more in depth. But just for this episode, we wanted to just do broader, kind of like your vision, your experience, and your expertise, just again, broader. So, yeah, maybe share a little bit about like what do parents and educators, what do we know so far? And then maybe where do you see it going? Where are we still sort of like, what are the gaps that we need to sort of uncover from the research side that will actually help parents and educators who work with young people every day?
Yeah, those are great questions. And I look forward to having those real nitty gritty conversations too that link specific research studies or findings to pragmatic recommendations. I think that will be a lot of fun. I will say there are components that are just universally going to be beneficial. So I've been speaking about the need to personalize and tailor intervention and treatment. And that's going to be, I think, a topic of a future conversation. But there are also strategies that tend to be important broadly for everyone. And so those are useful to keep in mind. And those are based on the research in my lab, but also decades of developmental neuroscience and clinical psychology. They aren't going to surprise you, but I'll share them with you anyways. So pieces such as regular sleep and sleep that is on a schedule that best fits the young person as much as possible is going to be helpful, right? So in adolescence, our sleep routine shifts. We all become more night owls as opposed to morning larks, right? And that shifts back in young adulthood. But during that period of time where adolescents are going through this really important development and complete change in hormone profiles, it's natural that their sleep cycle shifts to be later. But getting adequate sleep is just as or even more important in that age range than it would be for someone in my age range, for example. So working with your teen on determining what's going to help you stick to a regular sleep schedule. How is this going to fit around school, homework, social life, and extracurriculars? That with a little bit of planning, that can be a bedrock, which is so important. We know that sleep impacts mood and mood impacts sleep. And so locking that piece down can be quite important. Another couple of pieces that also won't be surprising will be the need for physical activity and adequate nutrition. So people know that eating your fruits and vegetables is always going to be good for any of us. But what might be surprising is just that the need to stick to, as much as you can, a regular sleep eating schedule is also important. So again, it just entrains your body to expect a particular routine. And that can be important for just ensuring that you have glucose delivered to your brain, right? Like the fuel that your brain needs to function appropriately. And of course, physical activity, exercise, it doesn't have to be running 100 miles as some people do in Colorado. It can just be moving your body for half an hour a day. These are also bedrock principles that are just as important or more so in adolescence as in other life stages. Now, the last one that I'll mention that is especially important in adolescence, maybe even more so than for kids or middle or older adults, is social connection. So young people have a long menu of ways in which they now connect with peers. And that, I'm sure, could be another topic that we could dig into in another episode. But whatever social connection looks like for your teen, or if you're a teen, for you yourself, keeping an eye on ensuring that there's enough connection, that you're connecting and building relationships with people who are good relationships, right? Friends who are supportive and whom you support, and at a frequency and sort of the nature of the social connection that feels good for you. And sometimes people will ask me, is there one kind of social connection that should happen? Does it have to be, in person? Does it have to be in a group, etc.? And my main recommendation there is, and this goes back to the personalization piece, keep an eye on what works for you and what doesn't work. So treating your own life and routine as a little bit of a science experiment. Of course, I have to say that as a scientist, but keep an eye on when I do this with friends or I cancel these plans with friends, what happens to my mood? So really kind of taking a step back to reflect on what's healthy for you. That'll be a big piece of this as well.
Ooh, so good. So good. So we talked about sleep schedule and getting adequate and also having kind of a consistent schedule, even if that shifts over time. That's okay.
Yeah.
Physical activity, adequate nutrition, and then the social connection, specifically, not just any social connection, but ideally,
Yeah.
strong, good influence and social connection. I think that's something that I've seen with young people in my work with as an academic success coach is that was really difficult for young people to
Mhm.
find the right people, especially
Yeah.
I worked with a lot of young people who are transitioning from high school to college and trying to find that strong supportive network. It takes time. It also takes energy to put yourself out there, to try new things, to try and meet people. And so that was a really interesting one that I've worked with a lot with young people. I have a strategy that I've used with that I just personally that I'm like, okay, and I try to encourage young people to do this is like find your five. What are your five
Mm.
go-tos when you just don't, you don't feel good? If you're kind of feeling low, if you're feeling anxious, I go to one of my five. And for me, it's getting out in the sun, movement,
Mm.
taking a second to breathe, just something
Yeah.
I don't just take a second to just have a deep breath. And drinking water for me and connection. So I think I might need to
Mhm.
add sleep in there at some point. Like, is my sleep okay? Because that is such a critical piece we know with our mental health. But I think, that's an activity for parents and for educators is find your five as a parent and educator, but also help your young
Mhm.
person or the young people in your lives find the five strategies that are really their go-tos so that they can kind of have
Yeah.
them in their back pocket. So if they start to kind of not feel great,
Yeah.
what are one of those that they can kind of do in the immediacy? So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great way of putting it and holding it in mind. And also, I think what you're describing offers some flexibility that you might not be doing all five every day, and that's okay. Sometimes mental health and emotional wellness almost are presented as a competitive sport in our culture, as though if you're not mentally well, it's because you're not trying hard enough or you haven't achieved some sort of goals. And that's just not how it works, right? So, absolutely, there are strategies that we can do to improve our own mental health and wellness. And also, it doesn't mean that it's a fault of willpower or motivation when mental health degrades. So, it may not be that you can do all the things, but maybe you can at least reach out to that friend, or maybe you can at least go outside and take that, 30 minutes to move your body. Whatever one thing you can do, that can be enough. And maybe tomorrow you'll do a second.
I love that. And I think what I love too about your like what we've learned about this research is that almost all of those are free, except for maybe the adequate nutrition. Sometimes we have access to healthy food. Sometimes, it can be a little bit more challenging depending on circumstances, but the rest of them, hopefully, we have a little bit more control over, and are also accessible financially. So I love
Yeah.
that too. Amazing. So, where do you see this research going? What do we need to know more about? What do we need to learn? And what are you most excited about in your own research moving forward?
Those are great questions. I could take a whole hour talking about where we're going. I think that a, a priority for research going forward is going to be not only discovery, but pragmatic, hands-on, scalable benefit to young people. And that has not always been as high a priority as some other elements of science, I'll say. That needs to change, right? So it's great if we reach new insight into, let's say, the brain signature of risk for depression. But if we can't actually use that information to inform treatment or preventive programming, then it's not particularly useful, right? It's not to say that there can never be research studies that are primarily aimed at discovery and not at translation, but we need to start doing a better job of balancing those pieces. So that was one of the reasons that the Center for Healthy Minded Mood was instantiated, again, to bring together people of very different backgrounds and expertise, but also to place an anchor point into meaningful real world benefit. And part of that has to do with some of the observations that we had, or folks in my group had, over the course of the pandemic, when we saw that the work that we were doing in the lab really wasn't touching the folks who were, walking past our offices in masks and really experiencing quite devastating mental health experiences. That was a time of, isolation and fear broadly, and also a time in which depression really skyrocketed in young people. So that's one really important direction. Can we place an emphasis and really incentivize discovery with a path to impact? So, we are doing that work now in a few ways. One, woven into all of the research that is sponsored by the center is an emphasis on translation. And that can happen in a lot of different ways. It might be, again, policy change. It could be a new type of technology support for the delivery of psychotherapy. That's something that we're working on now, as you know, in terms of a mobile platform that can support health and wellness out in the real world, and also can be used by patients and caregivers to track whether or not a treatment is working and what is happening in someone's daily life. But translation can also be about communication, right? Again, hearing from young people, what should we be looking at? What should we be prioritizing? And also sharing back to communities, including young people, here's what we found. What do you make of this?
So good. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit more. You've already kind of touched on sort of the work of the center, but maybe talk a little bit more about some of the programs that you're excited about, or it could be some of the research, or just where you hope it to be in 5 or 10 years, however you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. So again, the structure of the center is as a sometimes I think of the analogy of a community garden, right? So our job is to create the space and provide the tools and the soil that is needed for many groups to come together and collaborate, again, across disciplines. So we want to have engineers working with cognitive psychologists, working with psychiatrists, working with educators, working with clinicians, working with young people. And they are tilling the ground and planting the seeds and harvesting a diversity of different scientific discoveries that are all united in the mission of promoting emotional resilience and helping young people to live a life free from depression. So that's the vision for the center of what we're about. And so the programs that we are in the process of launching there are three signature programs that I'll share with you. One is about bringing that voice of lived experience in a structured way that can inform all of the plots in the community garden, right? So we are creating scaffolding for relationship building with young people in our communities through schools, through community organizations, through nonprofits, young people who are going to be working with us, along with educators, family members, etc., to tell us what their lived experience is, to tell us what our research priorities should be, to really weigh in on where we should be placing our bets when it comes to supporting and fostering new research projects. That program is tentatively called our Voice program, and it's really a way to spark new ideas for science. Our second program that I'll share with you is about implementing those ideas. It's the Healthy Mind Incubator Program, and that's a funded seed research program for members of the center who will come together in creative, again, outside the disciplinary box configurations and launch new studies. So the idea here is to give folks a forum to connect where they maybe never would have known one another before. Again, here I'm thinking about, let's say, a researcher in computer science and a researcher in developmental psychology, but they may share an interest in really going after that question of what technologies can support social connection in young people, right? So implementing or taking those ideas from lived experience and framing new studies. So that's our incubator program, so that then the studies themselves occur in our partner labs. That could be the RAD lab, or it is going to be many other labs as well who are affiliated with the center. And finally, the third program is our dialogues program. And this closes the loop with our communities. This is where we are interested in taking discoveries from our partner labs, from the incubator program, and sharing them back with community groups. Here's what we see. What should we make of this? What do you think we should do next? And really getting community insight and co-interpretation of the patterns that we're seeing in this work. So the center, again, sits at this, I guess, umbrella level where the idea is to help provide scientific groups and diverse constituencies with a new way of doing this research.
So good. I am really excited, of course, about Voice because I feel like that program is going to be sort of like foundational to all of the other, to the scientific, emphasis
Absolutely.
and focus of the center. And I think just centering youth voice is going to be critical in our work and in the future of this research. Anything else that you want to share with the audience? Yeah, about the center, about your work, what you're excited about next.
Yeah. Well, I would share with the audience that I hope they will connect with us, because this is a cornerstone of what we want to build here together, and we can only do it with the help of the people who are listening to this podcast right now. You are the ones who we want to hear from. You are the voices who will shape the direction of this work. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in youth mental health and emotional well-being to reach out. We have a website that I'm sure you can put up on the podcast page. You can reach out to us and communicate with one of our teams, express interest in being part of one of our programs. We have a youth advisory organization that we're going to be launching. So please don't hesitate to join us in this really important mission.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, and we're so excited to continue the conversation around healthy mind science.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you so much.